Hey, yo, what a div, y'all. Let's get right into it. It's time to talk about Penance, Dissipation, one of my favorite skills to play in the Sanctum, especially early on, but even more so later. Really, it's just the best Sanctum runner in the game. I am astonished it didn't get touched in patch notes, honestly. It's an absolute powerhouse of a skill. The only real flaw it has is clear speed, and that's not a thing that matters in the Sanctum. So here I am yet again for what I genuinely think is the fourth time in the past calendar year talking about Penance, Dissipation and its Sanctum builds. Except this time, I'm actually going to talk about the Hierophant version that I played in BPL 15. I did cover it on this channel previously, but I kind of just like showed it as like a, hey guys, Hierophant is insane for this. And I didn't really talk a whole lot about how to get there. And that's what this video is going to be. It's going to be talking about like how to put it together, how to get there, combined with previous videos, such as my most recent video before this one, talking about how to actually league start aiming for Sanctum and what you should be doing ahead of time, because this is not a build that you can play outside of the Sanctum very effectively, outside of like boss arenas, right? The PoBs that you're going to see in the description are not built for regular content at all. They are meant to be played in the Sanctum exclusively. And so keep that in mind, please, when you are evaluating these performances. They are purely optimized around damage performance, nothing else, right? And there's a ton of optimizations that I miss every time anyways. Also, in case you're, new here, I'm No Name HQ, whatever you want to call me, right? I am a huge Sanctum nerd. That's why if you look through my channel, there's been tons of Sanctum content. And if you're curious about anything regarding Sanctum, I probably have it somewhere on the channel, including other builds. I do stream. That link is in the description. I have a Discord. Feel free to ask me questions on either of those or in the comments down below. With all that said, let's get right into it. The first thing to talk about is actually just a quick overview of the build and skill in question, just because I've noticed, especially thanks to PoE 2, there's actually a ton of interest in PoE 1 from people who haven't played before, may haven't played with Penance brand before. So why not? Quick overview of the skill, right? Penance brand, or any brand really, is a little like a mark. You put it on the floor and then it attaches to something. And when it attaches to something, it starts to do things. Penance brand of Dissipation in particular is building up energy while it's attached. And each time it builds up energy, it starts pulsing damage. And the more energy it builds up, the stronger those pulses get, the bigger they get, right? Until cap. And it can be shared across multiple brands. Like they stack up the energy together on the target. This is very important, right? And so obviously the goal here of the character is to build a character that can build them up to their max stacks quickly and take advantage of it while they're at max stacks. Because once they fall off from their duration, all the energy is gone. This is a core mechanic of the build. It's why you'll see so much focus on cast speed and some things that shrink away your duration kind of avoided in the earlier stages of the character, right? It's a safety precaution, if you will, right? But you build up the energy and then you just nuke down single targets with extreme precision. Honestly, it's kind of disturbing how much damage this skill does, genuinely. And also, this build will also utilize a number of various things regarding the mechanics of conversion, and we'll talk about the implications of some of the buffed uniques actually regarding that and the nerfed ones, right? Because the most common variant of this previously was, of course, a charge stacker. And I want to let you know ahead of time, in case you're already panicking about that, it's not dead in the water at all. You absolutely can still charge stack, but I have found a pretty nice alternative to it if you are more averse to charge stacking, or if you want a more, I guess, like crafting expressive way to play the character. I have that prepared as well here, right? Overall, build skills in an incredible number of ways. And the first thing to talk about in terms of that scaling is like, well, Hierophant. When people ask me about Penance Dissipation and I tell them that I'm high on Hierophant, I've gotten a lot of questions, right? Why Hierophant? And that's a genuine question people ask me, because honestly, this is not the type of build you immediately would associate with Hierophant if you are not familiar with my content from prior, or like haven't heard other people really talk about it. Brands are a playstyle traditionally isolated to like Inquisitor and Assassin. It does have a presence a little bit on Elementalists historically as well, but it's mostly and occasionally, especially like Stormbrand on Occultist, right? Historically, that's where it was, and Hierophant had a brand node, has always had brands in the Ascendancy, but it's been really cosmetic. Quite a few leagues ago, they reworked Sign of Purpose. and they, well, gave it a purpose. But for most brands, that purpose was just to be effectively 25% more activation frequency, but in a really weird way, right? It's at the end, right? And the last quarter of the duration, it doubles the activation frequency. That translates basically to 25% more activation frequency. However, the math is not necessarily that simple when we talk about Penance brand, right? Penance brand of Dissipation, as I described earlier, uses a structure where it builds up its strength over time. So by doubling its activation frequency in that back section, when it's already ramped up, you're getting more than just 25% more value overall from the Ascendancy over the course of the lifetime of the brand, because so much of the damage is backloaded. And that's why Hierophant, right? I feel like so many of the other things that Hierophant offers, at least before this patch, we'll talk about something else in a moment, but before this patch, a lot of everything else that Hierophant offered, I felt like I could get elsewhere, right? You know, like I do like the easy access to power charges, but charge stackers and this assassin and all that stuff, or, you know, the insane crit scaling of Inquisitor, whatever it may be, right? Or, you know, Arcane Surge prior to this patch was just like a pretty strong buff that you kind of sort of indexed into a little bit, and it was nice and chill, and you could get equivalent levels of strength from other things, such as, you know, just how strong Card of Destruction is on Elementalist, or again, Inevitable Judgment, please. That note is ridiculous, right? Or even just the insane charge stacking synergy to have literally basically infinite crit chance on Assassin early, right? We've had a number of options elsewhere, but the interaction between Sign of Purpose and Penance brand of Dissipation really solidifies Hierophant's place as the best Ascendancy for this build in my eyes. And then additionally, we have stuff like, oh, I don't know, Arcane Surge getting buffed this patch. If you were not aware, Arcane Surge did in fact receive a buff where it is now a baseline 20% cast speed, no matter what, right? That buff, like the level of your Arcane Surge gem. This is only really relevant because of builds that, you know, previously couldn't trigger it at higher levels due to not actually consuming mana, such as this one using an Eldritch Battery, or, you know, not really wanting to wait that ramp time out. However, Hierophant's Arcane Blessing node gives us Arcane Surge the second we do any damage with our brand. So we have Arcane Surge, and this buff previously was a level 1 Arcane Surge buff and is now just the global new Arcane Surge buff, which is a 10% cast speed increase at base, which we can then scale with Arcane Surge effect, which is a stat that we really like because Arcane Blessing also has Arcane Surge grants 20% more spell damage on it. This is insane because that's scalable with Arcane Surge effect. Add in the fact that the Arcane Surge support itself is also now a 35% more multiplier level 20. It's perfect for us, right? And so another reason for Hierophant is that other Ascendancies do not have as easy of access to Arcane Surge at a baseline, right? And you might be saying, well, we just put the support in. Not necessarily, because it's most common to run this build as Eldritch Battery to be really aggressive with your reservation on your mana. We don't want to do that. We want to reserve our mana. So we don't have a lot of mana open, but we need to be able to cast our skills, and it's too hard to get it cheap. So we just go EB, but now we're not spending any mana. Enter Arcane Blessing. That's why Hierophant, right? The other interactions in play are cool and all, but these are the two major reasons why Hierophant over other options. With all that said, now let's go look at the PoBs, right? In PoBs, it is one link. It just has 3 configs in it, an early Sanctum config, as well as what it looks like in the end game as either a charge stacker or an alternate end game version where you do not charge stack, right? I've created all of these for you here. They'll be in the description down below. Early Sanctum. The major thing here, and I have a couple notes in here. I'm not being super thorough with a lot of this because I want you to come to these conclusions yourself, quite frankly. I trust in your ability to understand these things without too much detail needed, and, you know, ask questions if you have to. That's like an intelligent thing to do. It's just too difficult for me to preempt every question in a lot of ways. And I also think that the step-by-step approach really railroads your ability to make decisions, and I don't like that. So instead, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go walk through the parts of the PoB, starting with the early Sanctum section, where the number one thing to note is that this is a pretty basic tree. There are no clusters here, right? None at all. And it's just a basic tree you path out. You'll notice we do not have an elemental mastery taken. This is intentional only because it will mess up my calculations. I was trying to simulate how much the nerf to that mastery actually mattered. So I have it written in a config, and there's like a detail about it. Just account for one more point. to get that, right? Other than that, the tree is pretty standard, I'd say. It's just a decent priority on cast speed because, again, we need cast speed in order to build up our brands. They need to be beyond 20. I'll talk a little bit about the math involved in that in a moment, but cast speed, brand stuff, rune binder, very important, right? We talked about brand and how it attaches and then it builds up energy. We need rune binder to attach 2 at a time so that they build up energy twice as fast, right? That's a massive difference. Here's a quick example, right? We'll talk a little bit about the math of calculations and why you see stages 16 instead of max stages 20. And it's because if you calc with stages 20, you're just lying to me and yourself, right? Don't do that, right? So instead, we're going to talk about how I calculate this. And we'll use this cursor to the PoB here where I have activations 31. This does factor in the sign of purpose. I use a 25% more to factor in the 25% more part, right? 25% chance for double, or 25% of the time it's doubled, which just means if you have 20 activations, it's 5, 5, 5. And then that last 5 is actually 10. So 25, instead of 20, 25% more, right? Okay. So that accounted for, and the rest of the damage gained is actually in the stage count. I'll demonstrate what I mean in a moment here. So 31 stages, right? Or 31 activations per brand is what you see here on the PoB. I just realized my cursor's not showing. Give me a moment. Okay, here we go. 31 activations per brand is what we have here. That's the important number. So it takes, if we have 2 brands on the target, that means that each one is building up energy together. We need to build up 20 energy total, so they're going to build up 10. So that's 10, and that's 10 energy, 10 activations, my apologies, where they are averaging 10 energy per, right? 0 to 20, average of 10. Okay, 100. Keep that number in mind. Now, that's 10 activations out of 31. So there's 21 activations remaining that are taking place at 20 energy, 420. Now we add those together, and then we divide by our total activations per brand. 520 divided by 31 gets us 16.774. So you could say 16 stages, you could say 17 stages. I say 16 stages just to be on the moderate side of the estimation here, right? And that's why it's 16 stages over here. Now, let's just say I take out the 25% more brand activation frequency, right? We're just going to make this line brick for a second. It's no longer factored in there. You'll notice that we have 25 activations per brand. And we went down from 5.6 million DPS per brand. Remember that for a second, right? Now, instead, we only have 25 activations total. So 10 times 10 is 100 again, but we only have 15 leftover stages for activations at 20 stages. Plus 100, divide by 25. Luckily, we're still at 16, but barely. You'll notice that previously we were at 16.7 and now we're at 16. So you see what I mean? It's right there. And this has mattered in other situations where I might have more or less stages, especially when we start getting into like Swift brand setups. This setup is not a Swift brand setup, obviously, but when it is a Swift brand setup, this difference actually begins to matter. All that math done, that's, again, just a math demonstration of why Hierophant. Otherwise, a lot of this is normal stuff. 2 brands, have brands casting them, do damage, all that good stuff. We do take charge nodes, by the way. We have charges. We're a Hierophant. Conviction of power, really strong. By the way, my notes for the early Sanctum start, right? I did mention that you should have 3 or 4 ascendancy nodes. Your 4th ascendancy node in this case actually does not matter all that much. It's just a survivability thing. You do need to have Arcane Blessing, Conviction of Power, and Sign of Purpose for entering the Sanctum. That's just the bare minimum. Do it. You should have it anyways. It's just good for you. Otherwise, again, standard path thing. The items in this build are a little interesting, and I need to talk about one section in particular when we talk about this early game PoB. It is the rings and amulet. This is a self-ignite setup. I do not have an anoint on, by the way. You should do that. Don't be like me and don't have an anoint in your PoB. Or in your basic setup, but it's a basic setup. So maybe you just don't have one, right? You couldn't find a friend to anoint for you or something, who knows? But in this setup, these 3 need to be used together. Eye of Innocence is a useless item on its own, and without these 2, and these 2 are useless without Eye of Innocence. I just realized I forgot something very important. We're going to talk about that as well. So all 3 of these work in tandem. Eye of Innocence will ignite you. right? You will get ignited when you ignite an enemy every so often. And while you are ignited, you will be able to leech because of either this, or more importantly, the real reason to have Illuminated Devotion is the leech here to sustain through yourself being ignited for a tiny, tiny amount. And while you're ignited, you get an insane cast speed steroid. You can see how much damage is actually contributing here by having these rings on. And the one thing that I missed, and I'm glad I caught this now because I can even talk about it to you guys here, do not make this mistake when you're putting this character together in this state. You need a jewel with flat fire, like flat spell fire damage. Right? Yeah, you could get it on like a wand or on like on your weapon or something, but then you're not using a weapon with full good damage stats. Just get this little bit of flat fire. That way you can ignite and this will ignite. The alternative though is Herald of Ash. This was my solution during the league, during Phoenicia League when I was put onto this idea. I just ran a Herald of Ash because that also then gives me fire damage to ignite with. Either or, make sure you have some way to deal fire damage so that this setup actually works. And then you're off to the races. That's about it, right? That's the early setup. Configs and everything are like pretty accurate to like the actual state of your character. There's one detail here about being on low life, and this is a risky low life. If you do not like having Herald of Ash on your life with no pet blood, you can feel free to unreserve it. But remember, either move it in place of your Herald of Purity and lose a little bit of damage there, or have a flat fire jewel so you don't mess up your self-ignite. Okay, with the early game setup out of the way, with -1 mechanic that we're going to explain here as a bridge between early and like all of the other setups, let's go ahead and talk about our like later game setups, the charge stacking and alternate endgame setups, right? So starting with the first major thing, right? We have Animate Guardian on a Guardian's Blessing. This is a bit of an annoying setup to get right at first. And luckily, thanks to this patch, it's not a mistake that can cost you anymore, right? Your AG can't die and just eat your Kingmaker anymore, right? So because of that, you don't have to worry too hard about getting this wrong or right, but I usually keep it so that my AG can stay alive because so what, I can resummon him. I don't really want to resummon him if I can afford it. So I just have a level 1 Guardian's Blessing so that the AG doesn't die, which when equipped with a Gruffle's Pelt, that it doesn't die. Especially with 2020 meat shield next to it, it's just chilling. And you put your 1 aura there, and then you have one aura on yourself from Hatred, and the rest of your auras actually come from these specters, right? You're going to get specters. In this version of the PoB, it is a Spirit of Fortune and a Spirit of Fortune and a Pain Artist, perfect ones, which I do have the list here in the notes for you regarding, get 2 specters and adjust your auras accordingly. I do recommend Zealotry and Wrath via specters because the buffs on those perfect specters are better than the other options. But, if cost doesn't allow or whatever, so be it. Next up, like I mentioned, we have an AG, which since the cost of resummoning is no longer a thing, get a big AG. Lear cast in the Crown of the Tyrant with the Gruffle's Pelt, Kingmaker, Legacy of Fear, and Regenerate Gloves. Earlier on, you can replace Kingmaker with a Dying Breath. I should actually have that in my notes. Dying Breath into Kingmaker, because I have that factored in the starting setup, right? If I go show you the starting setup again here, let's just look at the early setup. You'll see I do actually have an Animate Guardian, and this Animate Guardian is a basic version of what we have there in the notes. As well as I have the Guardian's set on a Stone Golem instead, so that if it dies, I can just quickly resummon it, and it's a little bit less annoying than if my AG dies. You can just attach it to your AG though. Like, now that your AG can die and it not be a problem, you can do that. I recommend down leveling this Guardian's Blessing to 1, by the way, just to make sure. Same idea as with it in the real setup, right? Okay, back over to the real setup. Otherwise, a lot of this is pretty standard. The tree, as you'll see, it's pretty standard between both the charge stacking and non-charge stacking versions, because there's not a lot to it. A lot of it is brand specific stuff, and brand stuff is in clusters. So it is the way it is, right? Other things in gearing. We'll start with the not charge stacking setup first. The not charge stacking setup, I opted for rare wands. Be aware that Grace of the Goddess is decently competitive. It lacks the cast speed and will therefore lose activations per brand, and that will matter more than this calculation on the side will indicate to you. But it is an option before you have these big weapons, especially if you just account for that with cast speed in other places, right? Just be wary of that as an option. They buffed this wand and it did not need to be buffed so much. That wand is insane now. Other options around. So we have, there are not many other weapons I think are like in this ballpark, at least if you're not charge stacking, by the way. Then we go to Blizzard Crown. Blizzard Crown because it's just a standard brand helmet, which you could use this on a charge stacking setup as well. Personally, if I'm charge stacking, I'm actually not trying to make this because I really like the just pure unique feel of charge stacking setups, and I prefer this hat for when I'm playing it like the quote more legitimate way, if you will. Shroud of Lightless is my preferred chest piece in this arrangement, just for the pen that it provides. It means I don't need to get pen from other places, such as elemental penetration support or anything like that. And because it opens up the sockets, 2 sockets or more, opens up just enough space for me to have 5 abyssal jewels, including our Kurgle's Gaze, which then gets us the 40% arcane surge effect. That again scales that 20% more from the ascendancy. It scales the 20% cast speed from the buff, right? We love this, right? Other things in here worth noting. You need just 10% conversion on your gloves to finish out the conversion because 40% of it is on the tree. And then, the gem gives us 50. So, that's on this. There's also Relic Kesha's Impatience. This item got nerfed, right? If you're familiar with its old version, let's just pull up an old one on the side here. Relic Kesha's Impatience. You're familiar with this old version. It got nerfed out. It instead has other stat. Where is this item at? Oh my God, please. Okay, I have a couple different versions, right? But like, here we go. So, yes, instead of having all 3 charges, it is only 1 charge and then movement speed and corrupted blood. I find that frenzy charge ones are ever so slightly ahead of power charge ones and cost me less points to use effectively. So this PoB has frenzy charge in it. You can use power charge, and instead you just power charge. You just take some more power charge stacking stuff. Anoint your neck. You'll see the neck is anointed for Doomcast. Instead, anoint your neck for Infused, and that's perfectly fine. Otherwise, though, the frenzy charges are just still really good. They're frenzy charges, and boots don't have that many high dominant slots. You can just craft a really nice rare here instead, especially like some potential influence stuff or any like infamous mods from the new system. This slot is extremely flexible, and Relic Kesha's Impatience is not the end all be all here. Be very hear me clearly when I say that, right? What is it at all be all item actually is Arn's English. Arn's English is here because of the interaction. Like it says minimum endurance charges inside our minimum brutal charges. Brutal charges are a % chance to deal triple damage per. And so because our ascendancy gives us 4 min endurances, we can use Arn's English with it to convert that into damage, which turns Conviction of Power from a really good, balanced node to an insane offensive powerhouse. We love this node. Other things. This one Call of the Brotherhood looks really insignificant because it doesn't increase my damage any, right? And we don't have old hatred around. This one Call of the Brotherhood is specifically to make sure that we can freeze things. I rarely trust hatred alone to, give me enough oomph, so to speak, to land meaningful freezes. So I added Call of the Brotherhood, can be replaced with just another taming. Unironically, you could just put on another taming there and it's just fine. I just like the Call of the Brotherhood there for comfort purposes. That's a comfort pick. Otherwise, again, rest of this, pretty standard character. If you're trying to build towards this direction, my recommendation is that you should build into a Charge Stacker first, and then after the Charge Stacker, move towards this direction a little bit by selling off some of the other pieces and crafting yourself some bigger gear in these other slots. Especially making sure you start with a hat. It does not have to be this exact hat bind you. The least important part would be the conk effect. Like that sounds kind of crazy because it is literally a whole support that gives 39% more damage, but it's more so just about, building out a helmet. Like a helmet is a lot of damage regardless, and it frees up room for you to start to do other stuff. So you'll be chilling either way. Make yourself a hat and keep it going from there. In terms of other items to prio, really it's just, the taming is really strong. You might compete with it from like Bo and LS people or whatever. Even I know people aren't really looking at those two, but in case, right? Arns is extremely high prio and usually really cheap. So try to get your hands on this as fast as possible. I fear I might jinx this. Surely nobody watches this video. But get it from that way. And then other stuff is Balance of Terror is really strong. Kurgle's Gaze is insane. Not like Turbo Brick or anything. It is just like only 10% with all the other jewels in, but like we really like that anyways. And this Militant Faith, right? Just getting a Militant Faith of Dominus, mind you, right? It has to be Dominus for Inner Conviction, and ideally does not change either of these nodes. You can change the life node if you want. Cannot change instability. Not allowed. Now let's talk about how this differs from the charge stacking version, because I think this is the easier one to build directly into, but it feels a little bit more daunting because there are no incremental upgrades in this process. It is just a lot of buy the next best item. And you'll notice the jewels are a lot the same because, well, that setup is still really strong. I will say that Kurgle's is notably weaker in a setup where you don't have full Abyss, like 5 Abyss jewels in and only 3. But I mean, it's still pretty strong either way. So, you know, do what you will. You might be better off, though, as you'll see here, like replacing the Abyss jewels just with triple rare and going on about your day that way. Is what it is, right? Just get yourself some nice jewels either way. We still use the orange stuff here, as orange is just our best belt before Mage Blood. Still at the one called the Brotherhood. Still have relic caches on, obviously, because we're charge stacking. So the special thing about charge stacking in this is that we are using Badge of the Brotherhood, obviously allocated with Infused, so that we can, you know, have an insane amount of frenzy charges. And then we need relic caches still on frenzies to do this. Unlike the alternate version, you cannot use power charge boots in place of frenzy charge, relic caches, and patience. It is not an option. You do need this to be frenzy, because otherwise you just do not get the frenzy charges at all that we're getting from Badge of the Brotherhood. It's just not really an option. You can technically do something like replace Badge of the Brotherhood with this focused amulet. You know, anoint for infused, and then like that's a focused amulet we're talking about to compete with a Badge of the Brotherhood. It's not worth it. Just get the frenzy relic cache, right? Then conversion gloves, which you only need just one of the 2 mods shown here to finish the conversion, because again, we're getting the rest of it on tree from this mastery. Then I use Diala's Malefaction as my chess piece. You can use like Restless Ward for speed, especially because Restless Ward or Replica Restless, whichever one you want to use. Me personally, I'm a bit more partial to Replica, but it's hard to get this one corrupted. Either way, chess pieces can be corrupted with +2 AoE, and that's really, really nice. The only reason that you're not going to feel so insane about this is specifically because, well, we have Empower in this setup, and so if you opt out of Diala's for more speed, right? This is an option to get faster. You would put Replica Restless Ward in. It would give us the levels on that, but not our Empower. And I mean, that's fine. It's still plenty strong. Like, it's not like the chest is no damage value, right? And you get to be significantly faster, right? The movement speed jump went up to 162 from 96. You're significantly faster, but you do lose a ton of damage. You can decide how you feel. I just love playing with Diala's Malefaction. I love this chest. I didn't even configure the like colors exactly correctly here, but it's perfectly fine. It's pretty close. Other things of note, of course, Arcane Surge in as a support because of the buff. Power Charge on crit is a mandatory support for this version because we are charge stacking, but we're not using power charge, relic caches, and patience. So we need to be able to generate our power charges. This was the best way I could find that generates the remaining power charges, right? Because we will always start at 4 thanks to Conviction of Power, and then we just get to the rest of it via power charge on crit. And that keeps us fine. You'll see that our crit chance, even if we only have 4, is still perfectly fine. And then as we ramp up, we'll be chilling. Makes our boss a little slow potentially at first, but it'll be fine. Like, it's fine. Other than that, not much else has really changed. Like, really changes, right? You know, get yourself some charge stacking gear. It's worth noting again, when you're charge stacking, priority. Militant Faith is insane. The second you buy Militant Faith, Call of the Brotherhood is a dead item. Well, Badge of the Brotherhood is a dead item until relic caches and patience. Especially at the Militant Faith, but really even just Badge of the Brotherhood is after relic caches. Save for Malachi's Loop. If you do not have relic caches and patience, oh, actually, wait a minute. My bad. Malachi's Loop shouldn't even be here. We're using Frizzy Shark Boots. My bad. Perfect. glad I caught that while I was looking through here before posting this video, right? But Void Battery should be here because you cannot use this shield, the Malachi's Loop that you're so familiar with, because Malachi's Loop requires you to you still need to actually count as being at max power charges, but you'll just get the charges and then you'll lose them because we're not using power charge relic caches. And now the difference between relic cache, between like boots and glove and wand, by the way, or shield and wand, there is only 6.7%, far less than what we will lose by changing off of this to a power charge rally caches. So we just use double Void Battery, or keep an eye again on Grace of the Goddess. It's like right in there. It could be competitive. Keep your eye on it, right? And in the helmet slot, corrupted helmets with +1 power charge are really potent. A couple noteworthy ones. I have Will Clash in here. I have Replica Heat Shiver in here because we are, still shocking even with half of a portion of our damage converted. It's also worth noting that you can actually use it at base and it's still a pretty good helmet without the +1 power charge corruption, but obviously +1 power charge is the most important part of these helmets. Could even use a Thrill Still even if it just had fucking corrupted +1 power charge on it. And then this is like the best helmet we can get, a +1 power charge Replica Heat Shiver. Kind of a rare find though, because it's just not as commonly found It's not found corrupted, right? It'd have to be manually corrupted. Somebody would have had to have done the work, and they know that it's valuable in that situation, right? You'll see I have the same config here as well between the two versions. That covers pretty much all of that. If you have any questions about anything regarding the PoB or anything like that, please feel free to ask questions in the description or, in the Discord or on stream, whatever it may be. Granted, I will not be playing this on League Star myself, but I'm always keeping myself abreast of things related to this build because, well, it is my baby. Both in the sense that I just love this build and in the sense that, well, I'm the one who I made this PoB. I have to make sure that the information that you guys are using from it is, useful to you. Now, before we wrap this up, I've stuck this all the way at the end because why not? But I need to remind you again, like I said at the start of the video, this is a Sanctum only PoB. Like what I'm showing you here is meant to only be played in the Sanctum. Nothing about these PoBs functions outside of the Sanctum. It's even kind of rough for bossing, at least in this state in particular, because there are no defenses on this character, right? Like this, I am looking to nuke Sanctum, and the only time it has defenses is in the early version where it has just enough rest to make sure that we don't get one shot by incidental clipping from guards. That's not enough rest to keep us from falling over against bosses though, with our little HP, right? With that in mind, how you get to this point is up to you. I did just recently put out a video talking about ways of progression to get to the point at which you're playing a Sanctum runner. Whether that be via heist or via mapping, just make sure that you have a game plan for what you are going to play on your Templar prior to this point, right? Or if you're seeing this video and you're already like a week and a half into the league or whatever, just, use the money you already have and pre-buy all the gear so you don't have to do any of the stress, right? But make sure you are planned for what it's going to look like before this, because this is only for Sanctum and beyond. That's my last little disclaimer of the video. Otherwise, I hope that you guys found this showcase pretty particularly helpful and useful. At least helps answer some questions. Remember that the gear priority that I talked about earlier is really flexible based on prices and whatnot. Just really focus in on getting the items that enable the archetype in particular, right? Whether it be when you are playing at first in Sanctum, it is really, really heavy on getting your hands on Eye of Innocence and Moku's Embrace. That's a core trio that adds a lot of damage to the character. A lot of the other items are just kind of good items for the slot, but that a lot of what makes this early setup work is Moku's and the Eye. When you are building for the non-charge stacker, remember that it is not necessarily enabled by the hat, because you can't just use the Dialos, for example, from the charge stacking setup there as well. But the main thing is that you're going to need to have good weapons, whether that be Grace of the Goddess or really well crafted rares. And then, Rally Catches the Patience is always fine. Arn's Anguish, Arn's Anguish is pretty much immediately after you get set up in terms of priority, right? And then similarly for charge stacking, again, Arn's Anguish is an item that is usually cheap enough for you to grab day 2. Genuinely, like people are killing Maven, they're doing boss carries, they're getting Arn's Anguish, they're going, God dang it, and then putting it up for sale. Grab one, it's going to change your life. And then beyond that, the charge stacking items in order, I usually prioritize Revocations and Patience over everything else. This might be a little different now because of the stat changes or like the change to the item, where you might want to put a little bit more priority on actually getting your Militant Faith first, and then look at your Revocations and Patience. Make sure, of course, you're not stalling in content or anything. Remember that Diallo's Malefaction is not a required item. It's just the best in slot for damage, and that Replica or regular Restless Ward is a perfectly fine chess piece to run on the character until you can afford a Diallo's if you want the damage that it provides. Alrighty, that is it for me. If you have any questions, comments down below, Discord in the description. You can also catch me on stream and ask me questions there. I will probably not be streaming until the actual start of the league, just because, or like not like the actual start, but like as in like the day of league start, just because I'm, working through getting POBs together and videos and like planning my own league start and stuff. And while I could do that all on stream, I'm too new to this streaming shit, to be honest, and it just doesn't feel like my vibe. Maybe I'm crazy. It just, I don't know. It always feels weird when I try to do it personally. But check me out there this weekend, and going forward, if you have any questions or you want to just hang out, all that good stuff. If you rock with the video, you found this information helpful, or any of the other information I've released so far, or you just want to know what I drop in the future, consider subscribing to the channel. Notifications on so you know when we are posting. It really helps a lot. Or even really just leave a comment. Comments help the algorithm so much, right? Anywho, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.